Well, hello there, everybody out there in Nerdland. This is Chris from MajorLegacy.com with another exciting episode of My Talking Head. I apologize, I cannot do an edited version of My Talking Head today. It's got to be a one-take vlog. I have to work, so I do not have the time to sit down and render and edit and all that other stuff. But I do want to talk about this today. So, like I alluded to yesterday, we might actually have announcements coming sooner rather than later, perhaps without notice, because the announcement schedule is all up in the air. And lo and behold, this morning we had another one. I missed the initial push of the announcement because after 11, I went out and I walked my dog, or my sister's dog, and I came back and, there was an announcement that happened. So I missed the initial push, but nevertheless, when I came back, I had a really cool surprise. Poltergeist has been announced for Halloween Horror Nights 28. Now, yesterday, I also alluded to on the video that I was going to start putting out a hype list for the houses. Now, I had mentioned earlier that I don't like to talk about leaks and things of that nature, so I wasn't going to put out a complete hype list until everything was officially announced by Halloween Horror Nights and Universal Orlando. Now, I'm making a change. I'm moving Poltergeist to number 1. I am super, super, super stoked about this house. This was number 2 for the longest time on my hype list, ever since I heard about it months ago, back in February, I guess. So, ever since this was coming, I was like, okay. Then when I heard more about Slaughter Cinema, that moved into number 1. But I love this movie so much that when I saw the blog this morning, it all made it real. Like, it all hit me at once. Like, this is actually coming to the event. This isn't just one of my favorite horror movies of all time. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I want to echo a little bit of what what Charles Gray said on the blog earlier about how this movie was very influential for him. And I think I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think there's a good chunk of filmmakers and horror fans out there who really hold this movie in a special place. For people my age, I'll only speak for myself, but this was one of the first real horror films I ever saw as a kid. This and Gremlins were like the first two. Of course, Gremlins is more of a comedy than it is horror. It's more comedy horror. But this is like a straight up horror movie, or probably it's not horror in the way that we think of horror today, but it is a horror movie. And this is also a movie it's Steven Spielberg at the height of his powers, man. This is 1982, the same summer that E.T. was released. You look at the effects work in here. Of course, you have Tobe Hooper as well, directing the movie from Texas Chainsaw Massacre fame. So you have two great minds coming together to make this movie. Now, later on in life, when I wanted to, really make movies and study film and stuff of that nature, you get all those things, those rumors and those sort of Hollywood legends about, well, who actually directed Poltergeist? Was it Tobe Hooper or was it Steven Spielberg? And I think what where people look at Poltergeist and say, well, it's Spielberg directed this movie, is because the movie really does have all those Spielbergian qualities to it. It's about family. It's got that sort of happy ending, even though it's kind of scary at the same time. There's a lot of elements in here that Spielberg created that were based off his own childhood, like the tree outside. That was his idea. It tells a whole story about there was a tree outside his room and it scared the crap out of him when he was a kid. So he put that in the film. So there are a lot of Spielbergian quality stuff in here. And like I said, the height of his powers. 1982, the same summer as E.T. The effects work in here, ILM, sort of a newer company at the time, doing their best work in terms of the effects. There's a lot of stuff in here that hold, I think, a special place in a lot of people's hearts in terms of 80s nostalgia. Now, the question that some people probably, it's like, are you looking at it with rose-colored glasses? Is it just 80s nostalgia? I don't think so. I think this movie really does hold the test of time. It really does hold up. I watched it a couple of months ago, around the time when I first heard that it was coming. And, I was, again, I've seen this movie dozens of times, but I in terms of this year, I watched it back in February. I usually watch one of the movies that I usually watch every Halloween. It's on my Halloween list. And it does. It holds up a lot. The effects work is still actually really good for the time. It does have that 80s effects work look to it, but but it does still work. And that's another thing that I can't wait to see what they do in this house. I really want to experience what they do in here, because there might be some comparisons here to The Exorcist a few years ago, because this could be a hard film to translate, not necessarily on the same plane as The Exorcist. While that was more, more of an internal horror film, and it was going to be harder. The Shining was the same thing, although The Shining had a little bit more outside elements they can pull from to sort of scare you with in the house. The Exorcist was more of an internal horror, and how do you convey that in a house? Some people think they didn't do that. I was not a huge detractor of The Exorcist house. I like The Exorcist house. I don't think it was the best house that they've ever done or anything like that, but I don't think it was nearly as bad as some people make it out to be. This one is going to be hard, but not because of that, but because of perhaps the effects work. Like I said a couple minutes ago, the effects work in this film was groundbreaking for the time. Tame by today's standards, but for the time it was groundbreaking work. So how are they going to do some of this stuff? Like, one of the first images that I think of when it comes to Poltergeist is that image of Jo Beth Williams on the floor with that four-legged demon thing coming out of the door. Like that is such an iconic image from this movie. Are we going to see that? Are they even going to attempt to do stuff like that in here? I don't know. It's one of those houses that I really purposely not heard a lot about because I want to experience this house. I may know how the house begins and I may know how the house ends, but everything in between there, I have no idea what's going on. So aside from the fact that Charles Gray on the website today, giving a little detail about the house, it seems that we're going to go into the other side. We're going into the light, it looks like. And how do you do that? How do you pull it off? Like, what is the art and design's, imagination when it comes to what the other side looks like? Like, I really want to see that. You might get some detractors. Well, it's just like, the upside down in Stranger Things. But it is what it is. I mean, yes, there are similarities there, but, I really want to see what they do. I want to see how they do that and how can they differentiate from something like the upside down. If we are indeed going into the other side, going into the light, as it were. If we go through the house, and I think that's smart, because if we go into the other side, as opposed to just walking through the house, then it becomes just a generic sort of boring haunted house, because that's literally what it is. It is a haunted house. So it does offer, more elements to do if we are indeed going into the other side. So it expands the house a little bit and gives it a lot more to work with, which again, I really want to see what they do. I want to see what they do in this house. It is what it is. But Poltergeist is coming. This morning, it hit me. It was real. It's coming, and I cannot wait for this. I cannot wait for this house. And I am curious how it sits with maybe some of the younger crowd out there. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend seeing it. It is a good movie. Don't let anyone tell you different. Make your own opinions. Go watch it. If you don't like it, that's fine. But I really recommend this film. This is a really good movie with two great filmmakers in Spielberg and also Frank Marshall producing. With those guys working together, I believe Frank Marshall produced it. Powerhouse filmmakers at the height of their powers, doing what they do best. So it is what it is. But anyway, I'm going to quickly run out of time. So I will talk to you guys maybe sooner rather than later. I don't know, with the announcement schedule all up in the air. We'll see how that goes. But for now, I will talk to you guys later. Poltergeist is coming.